Hello, we are back for episode 7 of Bardown Beauties, presented by SodaStick.com. I'm Jessi Pierce. Alexis is in Boston, dominating the broadcasts with the NWHL All-Star Weekend. So our boy Fred here is going to do his best Alexis impression. Might just be some sound bars.
It's going to be awful. It's going to be awful. I'm not Alexis, and I can't pretend to be.
I mean, I'm trying to think of how you channel your inner Alexis, maybe. We should have gotten a manicure.
Wear high heels, and be as extra as possible.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. But we love it. We miss her.
And be 24. I can't deduct 10 years off of my age.
We actually had to kick Fred's family out of their own home in order to record today. So that's where our roaming podcast is at. Sorry, kids.
Sorry,
Kelly.
You
have to leave. You guys. Thanks, Kelly. You're
They're
the
at the pool. They're at the pool, though.
It's a good day to be at a pool.
Yeah, it's a good day.
Can't
Cold,
complain.
snowing.
No, we're so proud of Alexis out there in Boston doing her thing with the NWHL. Hopefully you guys followed along with her on our social media channels. She's been killing it as usual. Looked like a great time too.
I gave her one tip. She had to go to Mike's Pastries.
That's so when I was in Boston in November, that was what I was told too. Unfortunately,
Did you
go? I was there for such a short amount of time, and then I was like a little hungover the next day, so I didn't quite make it there, but that's like on my to-do list.
Come on. I mean, Mike's Pastries, you walk in, the cannolis are as big as your head.
I mean,
they're amazing.
Put it on the list. We'll all go out there again another time. That's what we'll do. But speaking of women's hockey, we kind of wanted to take another dive back into women's hockey topic here, because we covered a lot of the NWHL, which is the National Women's Hockey League, which pays its players to play. It's a professional league in a couple different cities here, but there's another group out there that's also exposing the female game. It's actually a group of players that got together and kind of unfortunately boycotted the NWHL, but they're exposing a whole new group. They've got a Dream Gap tour. It's the PWHPA, Professional Women's Hockey players. So you got a lot of the names that have become household names. A lot of USA Hockey women in the Lamoureux twins. And of course, you guys all know the heroics of that for the last gold medal win. You've got Hannah Brandt on that team from Vadnais Heights here in Minnesota. Quite a few Minnesotans, actually. Hillary Knight. So a lot of really household names. And while it can definitely be deemed unfortunate that there maybe is a slight separation in these two leagues, I think even Allie Thunstrom talked about it last week. They're exposing the game to an entirely different group. They've started this Dream Gap tour, which plays Hockey Canada opponent and in different cities to kind of continue to shine a light on the game at a high level. So I think it's exciting. They're still doing some really good things. The NWHL is doing some great things. All in all, it's not totally terrible to have the two different groups.
So what are they not getting? Why are they striking in your eyes? Or not striking. Why are they sitting out?
It's not quite a strike, I don't think. And like I said, boycott, it's a harsh word, but that's what it is. That's what they're doing. It's because when the Canadian Hockey League, which had previously paid women on the women's side, when they folded this past year, they decided that until the NHL backs an entire one women's league, they didn't want to take a part in another one, because now the Canadian team's obviously expansion, as we all know, at any level takes time. So the NWHL couldn't just gobble up those now, vacant teams in the Canadian league. So it's a group of women that decided that they wanted to kind of make a stand and take a stake and say, NHL, get your shit together and really back us and support us. And until you do that, they have some big name sponsors on board with them as well, supporting this Dream Gap tour. You guys will see Secret a lot is a big presenting sponsor for them. But it's interesting. They actually had a rivalry series going with Canada that they just concluded in Anaheim this past weekend, because while the NWHL had their All-Star, they were doing this rivalry series concluding in Anaheim. Team USA came out ahead 4-1 series. They won 4-3 in overtime on Saturday to take the series 4-1 in its entirety. And they were at the Honda Center. More than 13,000 people were in attendance. So keep telling us that people don't want women's hockey. I mean, 13,000. Think of that. That's insane.
I mean, it's insane, and I have this feeling. Isn't it better to be together? I mean, it's insane to split it, but you're splitting profits, and you're also the women who are staying with the NWHL. I mean, you're taking it kind of away from them, aren't you?
A little bit. I mean, I think it's tough, and as you guys know, I'm a USA Hockey girl, right? That's through and through. That's kind of my thing. So a lot of those women are affiliated with USA Hockey, and USA Hockey's continued to back that group. Not that they don't back the NWHL either. I think while in the ideal world, in the perfect world, everybody comes back together in harmony and sings joyous songs of lifting women up together. I don't think it's necessarily awful right now either, because not only do you have them catering to different groups, but you also got to consider those girls not playing gives another group of girls an opportunity to step into the NWHL, right? So you maybe have, instead of Hannah Brandt and all these Olympians taking these spots, which is great because that's great competition in the NWHL, now you maybe get somebody who was a third liner in college, and now they get the chance to experience professional hockey. So again, I agree with you, Fred. I don't know that it's ideal. I think you do want to have them, everyone together and everyone become one league. But I think it's been interesting, to say the least. I'll play the safe card there. I think it's interesting.
Do you think these two groups can actually continue separate? Do you think there's enough marketplace and enough money, enough players where they can have the PWHPA and the NWHL and they survive together? Is that possible?
I mean, they're showing that it kind of is so far, but it's new, right? It's kind of a first year existence thing. Down the road, no, I don't think they're there yet. I think if you have enough, there's been enough struggle, it seems, to maybe have even one entity survive. As clearly, I mean, when you had the whole other league in Canada fold, that shows that it's tough. It's not easy, especially in the way that just business operates and revenue drivers and marketing and different things. I don't think that either one will succeed, if they're as long as they're separate. I don't think, and I think the long haul, it would hurt each other. Right now, I think it's okay because I think it's just growing exposure. You've got different people involved, but I think down the road, I would agree. I think one unified group of women's hockey players together in one league is the way to go.
I kind of looked to the end of the WNBA because I think right now, does it actually feel like they're really feeling the strength of that league and they're starting to be able to pull, their own power, their own marketplace, their own fans. But they've been around since 1997.
Sure.
That's a long time to really feel like that is a strong league. And they just had a big agreement with their players, providing maternity leave to their players and really upping the price that they're giving their players for their contracts. So that's a long time, but it took a lot of backing from the NBA.
Right.
I mean, it was founded by David Stern, the commissioner of the NBA. One league you can look to is the KHL and what they're doing for the women over in Russia and really trying to back that effort over there. So what does it take for the NHL to actually jump on board and really push it forward?
I mean, I think, like you said, they have to prove that they will bring in the fans, because bringing in fans not only is support of the organization itself, but again, money. It's at the end of the day, it's the bottom line. It's a business. And it's hard in the WNBA. There we go. Has had its fair share of struggles too. And look at how different their season is entirely from the NBA, because they found that I think it's easier for them to do it in the summertime. And you have, it's a totally different thing in that respect, as far as not competing during the same season as the NBA. So I don't know if that's ever an avenue that maybe gets explored in women's hockey then too. You're not competing against your NHL. You don't have to build new arenas. You use the same arenas. You can share that space then. And maybe that's a way that you present it to the NHL. Say, hey, can we work together on this and figure out a way where, we're not asking the NHL to, and not that they don't have the money. I guess that's the thing at the end of it too. It's like the NHL has the money that they could easily throw some support that way. And I think they're doing it very little by little, All-Star Game, for instance, right? Including the women there and trying to give some money to USA Hockey and Hockey Canada and kind of that. They're tiptoeing into it a little bit more because they have to, because it looks kind of ridiculous on the NHL that they haven't already put a bigger support on that. So I think they recognize that they're going to eventually have to do something, but they don't want to just throw money away either. And not to say that they would be by any means, because again, as these women have proven on any level, whether it's the PWHPA or whether it's the NWHL, I mean, these women can play. And again, I don't know how much we can stress that enough. Like, it's good, fun hockey. 13,000 people watching Team USA and Hockey Canada. I mean, think about the aftermath of the Olympics too, and the women's team when they took gold here in America. I mean, it's there. I think you have a group of people, but hockey itself is a niche sport. So I think it's not crazy to ask them to watch women's in addition to men's. It's not one or the other. You can be a women's hockey fan and a men's hockey fan at the same time.
Well, and I think it's which came first, the chicken or the egg situation. You have the talent out there, especially Canada and Minnesota, there's a ton of
Right.
awesome female hockey players, but they need to get that push and they need to get that limelight. I think right now it kind of feels like the NHL is kind of throwing them a bone sometimes when it comes to, we'll have some women's at the All-Stars games. It's like, okay,
You chew on this and we'll be
right,
done with you for a little bit.
We'll be done for a little bit. You got to put the money to get the fans. You got to have the fans to get the money.
Right.
It's just which dam is going to break first.
Right. And again, I think I like to be optimistic. As everybody who knows me, that's what I do. So I do think that the NHL is going to give it a fair shake. I think they're really, especially now as they're expanding, they're into Seattle, right? So you've got more teams that are going to be bringing revenue into your league. Hockey's gotten a little bit more popular. I do believe that. So I think they just have to be comfortable. I think you finally have to have somebody in the NHL offices that says, hey, we have to do this, you guys. Like, I think, I understand the hesitance from a business standpoint 100% because you don't want to put money into something that you don't believe is going to be a success. But I don't know that the NHL doesn't necessarily think it's a success. They just don't know how much, right? And I think that's what the deciding factor is, like how will this succeed? And I have to imagine that they have been monitoring the NWHL, and I have to imagine they've been monitoring the Dream Gap Tour to see what's been happening there. How has that done, from a marketing standpoint and from a revenue standpoint. So hopefully a lot of that helps. And again, we talked about it in the last episode, the conversation around it. Keep talking about women's hockey and the excitement of it and how much you love to go watch and love to go see. I unfortunately did not see anybody tweet me photos. We did get one from Paul wearing a Bardown Beauties sweatshirt. Shout out to Paul, who was at a women's hockey game. But I know I challenged everybody to get out there and go to a women's game, whether it was an NWHL, high school, college, whatever, maybe even if it's an 8U game for your daughter. Get out there and check it out. It's hockey, right? We love hockey.
I think we're also at a tipping point where there is a ton of talent where it's going to happen. This groundswell of a lot of young girls playing, and you don't have the women's like, I had to play on a boys team.
Right.
That's not happening anymore.
You
have a ton of leagues out there.
Right.
And there's going to be this, hey, we're ready to do this. Let's go and let's have some fun.
Yep. No, exactly. So I think it's something that we will keep talking about too here on our podcast. And keep an eye. Obviously, Alexis is still very involved in the NWHL. I get to do a lot of really great things with USA Hockey. So we'll be sure to keep bringing you some of that hot content. We have a lot of really great female players, coaches, statisticians, analytics, statisticians. I was a stats girl once upon a time.
Are you sure you can't pronounce it?
That's why I write. I'm very bad with words. But hey, let's do a podcast, right? Speaking of podcast content, we want to be sure we're giving you the best each and every week. We love rolling the content out to you. We love that you guys listen, but we want to see this thing continue to grow. So be sure that you share our podcast with family, friends, bring more of them into that Buttes family, leave a review on your favorite podcast streaming app, and really let's keep it getting out there. Let's get this stuff. Let's get the Bardown Beauties everywhere that we can. So again, be sure to review, share, and bring more into the Bardown Beauties family. Before we get to our guests, Dane Mizutani and Megan Ryan, both beat writers for the Pioneer Press and Star Tribune, we want to give a shout out to sodastick.com, our presenting sponsors. Our big shout out this week ties into the Bardown Beauties merchandise. Who got their sweatshirt? Who got their t-shirt?
I did.
Fred is wearing his right now. I wore mine all weekend.
Mint green.
It's gorgeous. You look beautiful, Fred. No, we saw some people share their photos with us. It looks great. So again, sodastick.com. Thank you guys so much for purchasing. Thank you, SodaStick, for getting that done. It looks wonderful. Stay tuned for more limited releases that we will have throughout the year as this thing keeps rolling here. And don't forget that you can use code Bardown Beauties at checkout for free shipping on all of your purchases at sodastick.com. We'll be right back. Now joining us, two of the best beat writers in the Twin City. Yes, I said it. I believe it. The best. I think you guys are out there. That's why we're having you with the Buttes. We've got Dane Mizutani with the Pioneer Press, wild beat writer. Also does a little bit of Vikings and kind of
a little bit of everything.
Nailed
the last name, by the way.
Thank you. I worked so hard on that. Dave Schwartz. We wanted to make sure we got that one right. So we've got Dane. Also, that other gal is not Alexis. It's Megan Ryan on the other side of the river with the Star Tribune, beat writer for Gopher Football and Gopher Hockey. Thank you guys for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, you guys excited?
Pump.
I feel the energy. You know, this is going to be good. It's going to be great. We can talk a lot of Gopher stuff since you guys are both Gophers. Let's start with you, Dane. Talk a little bit about your background. You're from Hawaii, but somehow you chose this as a better lifestyle.
I don't know. Wound up here. Born in Hawaii. Parents split up when I was pretty young, and my mom moved all over. We settled in Illinois eventually, like when I was 4. So grew up in the Midwest and decided can't get enough snow, so let's go to where there's even more. No, followed a girl up here. Didn't work out. Never does. But the career worked out pretty nice. Yeah, I'm happy with how everything worked out, and went to the U, row the boat, Sky Uma, go Gophers.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And then landed the Pioneer Press over time, and feel fortunate to be doing what I'm doing. So
Yeah, and Megan, you're very familiar with the Gophers, obviously,
am.
too. Talk
Yeah.
about your career path.
Well, I mean, fun fact is that's where Dane and I met, was at the University of Minnesota, working at the
yes.
Minnesota Daily. Dane was
I
my,
was her boss.
There we go.
And she was, let's just say,
oh my
a
God.
problem employee.
No, I wasn't. We had one minor disagreement.
A long
About?
disagreement.
Well, now we have to. What happened?
Oh, you don't
Okay.
want to start
I'll-
this.
let's just jump right in.
Oh.
Yeah. Vinny Lettieri used to play on the Gophers.
Yes.
This is a hockey
He's a
story.
hockey-
This
Yeah,
does
it's-
make
it's a
sense.
hockey guy.
Full circle.
Very famous family. He's a nanny as well.
He
so,
is.
yeah.
And he wore nice suits in college, and Megan thought that was a good idea. I thought that was a good idea.
Thanks.
She did a great job with the story.
Thank you.
She asked if it could go on the front page. I said yes. Went to news meeting, didn't go on the front page, and Megan psychologically bullied me for 6 months after that.
Never let it go.
Okay,
Never
but
let
what-
it go.
What story went on the front page instead of
The
mine?
University of Minnesota women's dance team won the national title.
Is that a varsity sport?
I
Is
mean,
that a revenue generating
it's a winning,
sport?
It's a winning thing, though,
Yeah.
right? You win.
I don't
you
know.
get front page.
That's what I tried to tell her. There was no reasoning with her.
so upset.
And now we're friends again.
To
but
be fair, though, I was super high strung in college, and it took me a long time to settle down.
yep,
Good.
can confirm.
But now I'm a lot better, so it's fine. But anyways, that was a tangent. But I went to the University of Minnesota, met Dane, best friends forever. I don't know, I moved. So I went to Dallas and I covered high school football, the Dallas Morning News for a little bit. And then I went to Pittsburgh and I was there for 2 years doing a lot of stuff, college basketball and Penn State football, high school stuff. I did a little bit of Penguins. I did their Stanley Cup run when they were playing the Sharks. That was like my hockey thing when I was there. And then I came back here to the Star Tribune. I've been here for 3 years now. Did soccer, and then now I'm on Gophers football and hockey.
I mean, obviously, high school football in Texas, everybody talks about it, but is it truly as crazy as everyone talks about here? I mean, is it like hockey, high school hockey in Minnesota?
Yeah. I mean, it's even bigger just because of like the money that's behind it. Like they have stadiums there that are like better than some Division II colleges.
Yeah.
Maybe even some small Division I colleges. Like they have huge stadiums. It's like it's so intense, and like the homecoming situation down there too is wild. Like I never realized homecoming was such a big deal, but in the South it like super is. And they wear these like big mums. It's like a giant like brooch thing, but they like
Like
pimp
a
them
bouquet
out.
on your...
Yeah, but they put like speakers in it, and like it was like a whole
Texas
thing.
forever.
It was very eye opening.
Clear eyes, full
Clear
heart.
eyes, full hearts. Yeah.
Can't lose.
Tim Riggins.
Ugh.
Talk about him. Tim
Saracen.
Riggins. But, not a bad year to be covering Gopher football. What was that like? Especially this was kind of your first full year with Gopher football, right? I mean, for the most part.
Yeah, this was my first season, so it was kind of a doozy. I don't know, everyone was like, I don't know. I think people thought they were going to be good, but they were a lot better than anybody expected, certainly better than I expected, and so that kind of made my life a lot harder. In a good way, I guess.
Yeah.
But it was just very busy, and it was really crazy, and they were, like, they were on a 10-win streak there for a while, and they beat Penn State at home, and that was a big one. So it was a lot, but it was really fun, and I was happy with like I got to know a lot of the players better than I thought I would, which was something I was worried about, because when you cover hockey or something, it's like you got 20 guys and you can kind of get to know them a lot better. But when it's football, there's like 120 of them, and half of them you never see. So I thought that was going to be kind of a challenge, but I was able to get to know a couple of them and do some good stories. So I was happy with it.
One person that didn't doubt the Gopher hockey or Gopher football team, Dane. Every day, every time we'd see him when the Wild started up, he was rolling that boat hard.
I would let them know, and they didn't. They didn't let me down.
No, they were good.
They
That
let
was
me down for a couple weeks, but
Yeah,
bounced
it's all
back.
right. What was the most exciting part for you then? Was it just kind of surprising everybody and having them do what they did and really change the Tides here in Minnesota and get some excitement on board for them?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was interesting to see how, like, when we were in college, they weren't that good, and like they've been kind of mediocre for a while, right? And so it was really interesting to me to finally see what the Twin Cities is like when they're good, and how much people kind of buy in and start really being excited and going to the games and filling the stadium and reading all the articles or whatnot. Like, I think that was really interesting, just that there can be that like fervor, and it kind of like further proved to me that like the Twin Cities fan market for all sports is like really bandwagony. Like, we really care when you guys are good,
right?
Because like everyone gets really excited
and
gets
we
their hopes
hate
up.
you when you're not good.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, one thing I find interesting for you, like you mentioned, that Gopher football team is so big, but I know you follow a lot of those players very closely on social media. How important is that for you to do as a reporter today, to really, you know, make sure you're following their Instagram when you can, their Twitter, everywhere that they might be present, for you to be present with them there?
Yeah, it's really important. That's like a factor of reporting now.
Yeah.
And I think all young journalists, like Dane could probably attest to this too. Like, that's a lot of the times where we get story ideas. Like, I follow these guys on Instagram or Twitter, and I see something they put on their story, and I think it's kind of funny, and then I follow up with it. So I've gotten a few good story ideas from that. And I follow them everywhere. Like, my Twitter is, like, I follow them all on Twitter, all on Instagram, most of them on Instagram. The one thing I don't do is Snapchat. There are some things I don't need to see. But for the most part, I do. I follow them and I stalk them.
Yeah.
And I tell them that if I ever, like, I'll be like, hey, I saw this on your Instagram. And they're like, oh.
Cool. Dane, how about you? You follow a couple.
I follow most. I
guys?
feel like maybe it's a little different with the Gophers because college kids are so into their
Right.
social media, whereas, you know, Zach Parisi's not perusing Instagram
I mean,
and posting.
he has Twitter now, right?
Yeah,
I don't- hasn't
does he
posted.
really have Twitter though? Like, does Ryan Suter really have Twitter?
Yeah, right.
So some of these guys, I mean, you know, Matt Dumba's really, really
Yeah.
into social media, and really, really, it's really prevalent in his life, and lets kind of fans into that side of him. And I think that's something that's really beneficial. Sure. It's beneficial for us as reporters because we get to kind of see that side, and then, like Megan said, follow up on it. But I mean, you look at the NHL, I think they could afford for more people to be leaning into social media and be more connected with their fans, because I don't know, I'm a big NBA guy, and you look at that sport and they're just all in on it. And I
Right.
think that's something the NHL could use, because they're just not super connected to their fans, in my opinion, right now.
Sure.
Like, the people who really care, but they're not grasping and pulling in those casual observers.
Right. You might have a player or two that's really, like you mentioned, Matt
Right.
Dumba. He's super engaged on his Twitter. Jason Zucker does a really nice job as well. PK Subban
Right.
outside of the Wild. I mean, you do have those players, but it's interesting to say that the NHL as a whole needs to put a better emphasis on some of that stuff.
For sure.
You wrote a very great Matt Dumba story. What's been your favorite story so far that you've done? You've covered the Wild for how many years now?
This is middle of the 4th season. That
Okay.
sounds pretty crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. So what's been your favorite story, whether it's a feature or a particular player, coach, even maybe an off-ice story that you thought was you're pretty proud of?
I think just working with Jason Zucker, like you said, he does a lot of great things with the community, and got to tell Tucker's story. You know, that story's been told, but for him to open up and tell it again, Tucker Hellstrom, like it's really cool to see that side of an athlete. And when you build that relationship and they're willing to kind of break down those walls and talk to you like people instead of just reporters,
Right.
Reporter to athletes, just person to person. So starting with that story, I think that was a good one to write. It was a hard one to write. But I think the relationship's kind of built from there, and just working with him and seeing all the things that Jason and Carly do in the community has been pretty cool. And then the Matt Dumba story, excuse me. I think me and Matt Dumba kind of connect in a way that some of the reporters don't. Like, we listen to the same music.
Dane is very hip. In case you guys have never met Dane or should follow him on Twitter, he's pretty hip.
I'm not that hip. It's
You're
just
hip.
like look who you're working with on the hockey beat at the Minnesota Wild. There's not a lot of competition to be hip. But
Wow, I take offense to that.
yeah, that was
but-
a veiled shot at you. But no, Matt, like, I think me and Matt, like, we can talk music in the locker room and things like that. I did a story on him last year about how he's like the locker room DJ in there, especially on game days, just kind of like the exchanging of the aux cord.
Yeah.
Something that was interesting to me. I don't know if it was interesting to certain fans of the NHL, but I think there was a certain sect of people who thought that was interesting. Like, and I think digging into those stories, that I feel like I know hockey pretty well now. I'm pretty close to an expert on it, working in it for 4 years, but I have a different lens of I'm still going to be interested in certain things
Right.
that a casual observer would be in. So I think that's what that benefits me. Like I can see a story that maybe I would think was interesting if I wasn't working in hockey. So those
Well,
kind
and
of
you
stories.
have to find those, right? Like you
Right.
can only talk about a win or a loss in the X's and O's so much. How do you guys, I mean, we talked social media, obviously that lends itself, but what are some other ways? Is it just getting to know a player on a different level and putting your microphone down and not in their face all the time and just having conversations with them to get them to open up a little bit more, do you think?
Yeah, I think just talking to them like a person, not just
Yeah.
someone who's always looking for quotes.
Right.
And it's kind of tough. Like, I'm sure the guys don't always want to talk to you. Like, when they're done with their workout, their practice, their game, they want to go home. So you can only shoot the breeze with them so much. But I think it does kind of go a long way to talk to them just for the sake of getting to know them rather than,
Right.
hey, give me this quote, I'm on deadline, or give me this quote, I need a story. So
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's true. No, I think actually like that's what I like about Dane's work so much is he does bring a different flavor of coverage to hockey. Shut up.
Dane's head is just swelling like, yes, I am a god on the beat.
But like, I mean,
Megan knows her stuff.
I'm an expert. I'm one of those people who likes to read those kind of alternative story formats. And I do that in my own work too. So when I look at like the NHL coverage and sometimes it's a lot of X's and O's, a lot of like, what's the forecheck and like all that stuff. Yeah. But like when I get to read a story about passing the aux cord around, like that's something that like immediately piques my interest and I want to read. Right. So I try to do that in my own work too. And that it's hard. There's a lot of traditional sports fans out there who don't want to read that stuff, or maybe they don't think they do. But I think in finding those stories, like, yeah, it's treating them like a human. Like Dane said, I remember I did a story on Shannon Brooks, who's a senior running back for the Gophers this year. And we had a kind of heavy topics to talk about. Like his mother died. He had 2 really bad injuries. And then he was arrested like all in 2018. So we had like a lot of stuff to cover.
It's a little bit, yeah.
But I didn't like, when I went in to interview him, I wasn't like, so your mother died like right away. I was
you
like,
didn't lead with that one?
No, I didn't. But I remember I follow him on Instagram and he has this like really cute miniature husky. And so I was like, oh my God, tell me about your dog. And so we talked about his dog for a while. I knew he liked to rap. So we talked about that. And it wasn't until like half an hour in that I was like, so let's talk about your mom.
Sure.
And I think that goes a long way because they kind of see that you're not after the sensational stuff.
Right.
You're looking just to kind of get to know them as a person. And I mean, at the end of the day, you do enough stories like that. And I think word spreads almost. Like I did a story in the off season about Tyler Johnson and I went to North Minneapolis with him. And that was kind of, I give a lot of credit to Tyler because I didn't know him that well, but I was asking to like go home with him and meet his family and stuff. And he let me do it. And I think that story turned out really well. And I almost think that helped maybe throughout the season because guys were like, she did a good job with Ty's story and maybe I can trust her with mine. And so sometimes I feel like I would go into an interview with a guy and he would just like open his vein and kind of just like tell me this stuff. And I was like, I wasn't expecting this. So I think it's just being there, being interested. I think being younger and also diverse helps for some of these athletes, at least. Maybe not as much in the NHL, but certainly in football it helps. Yeah. It makes them feel a little more comfortable. So.
No, I would completely agree with you. I think building that trust with the team that you're covering is huge. Like I know for me, I had to make a very conscious effort to like you said, get to know them, have those conversations, because then they are a little bit more apt to open up and tell you something that maybe they're not going to tell another reporter that's always just kind of been the hard hitting, XO guy. So I would completely agree. Who has been the toughest interview that each of you have had on, and this doesn't even have to be necessarily Wild or Gopher, but who's been the toughest interview that you've had? Whether tough in the sense of maybe they didn't really receive you very well, or even the toughest topic. I mean, maybe it is the Tucker and Jason one because you said that was a sensitive issue. Let's talk about that.
I think the NHL is pretty good.
Yeah.
Like the guys are pretty vanilla and don't, stray away from the cliche too much.
Right.
They're pretty cookie cutter, but they're all generally pretty friendly. Mm-hmm. Haven't had many problems in the Wild locker room. And not to say, I also help cover the Vikings. Not to say it's a problem there, but it's so regimented. Like Kirk talks on Wednesdays, Diggs talks on Thursdays.
Sure.
So you can't really build a relationship with them. I would say Stephon Diggs is really, really hard to talk to. Because he leans into that diva mentality of being a receiver, and I think that's what makes him really good. Like he obviously believes that he's the best, and he walks around the locker room like he thinks that.
Yeah.
But when you go in there and you can't you haven't built that past relationship with him, and then you're also trying to talk to him. Like, he can be a really tough guy to talk to, and I think that's pretty normal in the NFL, but it's one of those things where you kind of appreciate it because he doesn't BS with you.
Sure.
Like, if he doesn't like your question, he tells you. But it makes it kind of tough, and that's the first
Is
guy
it
that comes.
intimidating then, knowing
It
that
can.
like you have to really think about what you're saying, like
It can be sometimes, but I think everyone missteps with their words.
Sure.
Journalists and athletes. So
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily the biggest thing. It's just like you want to kind of have that respect, and sometimes it's not necessarily that he doesn't respect you. It's just like it's not there because he doesn't know who you are.
Right.
There hasn't been that past relationship, and I think that's manifests itself more in the NFL than probably any other sport, because like Megan was saying with football, it's so big. There's so many people.
Yeah.
And there's also so many reporters where you can't build that, those one-on-one relationships very much.
Right. Megan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I mean, I've had my fair share of like bad or awkward interviews and like also scrum settings where scrums are always the worst because like if somebody snaps at you, it's like public.
And for those that don't know, a scrum is what you see the big mass of us media folk that are all like hovered around
Huddled in a
someone's
circle,
locker,
yeah.
and trying to get your quote. And they can be a battle in there too.
Yes.
There's you could throw elbows. I mean, I know I've gone in there against
Yeah.
the Canadian media when they come to town, and it's
Well, the
like,
TV
God,
guys
the
are
TV guys are the
vicious.
worst.
The
They
cameraman,
will
man.
push you out of the way. They
Whip you
don't
in the
care.
head.
Yeah, Fred cameraman like you, just always in the way.
Yeah. Box out.
But
So-
is there anybody? Not to necessarily call people out, obviously, but
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I pretty much wiped the bad ones from my memory like immediately because it's like so like horrible for me to keep going over them.
Yeah.
So I have had my fair share. I think I've actually gotten a lot better about it, like not getting like worked up about it. But a good story that is hockey related kind of was last year on Gophers Hockey, Rem Pitlick, now of the Nashville Predators / Milwaukee in the AHL, I think.
Yep.
I wanted to do a story, actually. This was Dane gave me the tip. I don't even know how he knew this, but he...
Instagram.
He was like, yeah, Rem Pitlick cooks. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And so I wanted to talk to him about that. And I initially just talked to him one-on-one and was like, hey, like, I heard you cooked. And like, what would you think about a story about that? And he was like, I don't know. Like, why would you want to do a story on that? I just cook.
I play hockey. I just cook food.
And I was like, well, I know, but like, I just think it's kind of interesting. And he's like, well, I mean, I'm not a chef. I was like, Rem, I know. Like, I just think it might be interesting. So I kind of had to talk him into it. And we eventually like set up this thing where he cooked something for me in this like kitchen at Athletes Village at the University of Minnesota and wrote this story, and it turned out really well. And it's really, I could tell like the whole time we were doing like the cooking and the interview, he just was kind of trying to downplay it and like was really kind of unsure. And I just had to keep telling him like, dude, just trust me. Like, it's gonna be fine.
It's
like,
fun,
You're
yeah.
not gonna look weird. It's not gonna be like strange. Like, this is a
Did
good
he
story.
plate everything for you too?
Yeah.
Was he very like
chopped.
was it?
Yeah,
Oh
it
my
was
God.
really funny. And he like put on these like blue plastic gloves to cook. He's like very clinical about it. It was interesting. So anyways, I wrote this story, and like fast forward a couple of months, he goes to the NHL, and I had texted him when he declared or whatever. Is that declared for the draft? That's not
No,
what they do.
that's not what
When they sign, when they go pro.
Yep.
Still in football mindset. So anyways, I had texted him when that happened, and we had talked like a couple weeks after, like I think he made his debut or was about to make his debut or whatever. So we talked about that on the phone, and he was like, I just really want to thank you for writing that story. And I was like, oh, and he's like, yeah, because I really didn't want to do it. And I was really unsure, but like, it really helped me. Like, I had so many guys like in the front office at Nashville that were like telling me about that story and like how great it was. And like, I think it really helped
fun.
me. And I was like, wow,
See, yeah, we know what we're doing,
I told
right?
you to trust me. So now Rem is he's such a nice kid, but he like texts me every now and then. It's just like, thanks so much for writing that story.
Just
and I'm like, it's
Hanging on his wall. That's his one
I
proud.
know. Well, he was
story.
telling me he went to development camp in the summer, and they like put together like a packet of just like inspirational stuff, and that story was in there. And he was
Yes.
like, everybody at development camp read it.
Thank God that story went on the front page of the Star Tribune. Otherwise, you would have quit. Oh my God.
Probably. If my Gophers hockey stories don't go on the front, I will riot.
Boycott. You cook. Can't let you not talk about your cooking. Your
This is Dane's
Instagram
favorite
cooking
topic.
show. Well, and then more interesting. What's your dream after this? I know you told me. What do you want? What do you want that to transpire into?
Yeah, I told Jessi my ulterior motive. There we go. I like to cook. it's something I've always liked to do. And I recently got more into it because like about a year and a half ago, I decided I was going to like reinvent myself. Not even really that, but I was just going to take like my hobbies more seriously. Cause at the time it's like, I only did work and that's all I cared about. And then I was like, you know what? I have friends and family and hobbies and I can do something. So I started to cook more and now I'm really into it. And I cook all the time and I try to do different cultures and recipes and vegan stuff, vegetarian stuff, you know, real traditional thing. So anyways, I'm real into it. And my plan, my goal is I'm going to get to know some athletes and then one of them is going to, you know, turn pro and make it really big. And then I'm going to be their personal chef.
I think that's a fantastic idea.
All right.
No, you have other thoughts? You don't like
cooking.
it?
No.
Are you not?
Megan's a great chef.
Wow, thank you.
She lets everyone know it too, man. Let me tell you. Do not bring jar pasta sauce in her kitchen or you will be crucified.
Just make it yourself. It's so much better.
San Marzano tomatoes?
Only.
Only.
Fair. No, I would agree with that. I don't like jarred tomatoes or spaghetti sauce. Do you cook? I mean, you're a bachelor. Will you cook?
Do I cook?
Yeah.
No, not really.
No.
I can
He
cook.
can.
There are some things that I can cook.
Okay.
I wouldn't consider myself a chef.
Sure,
I'm no Rem
broccoli
Pitlick.
pasta, didn't you?
No,
Yeah.
you're no Rem Pitlick.
I'm no Rem Pitlick, let me tell you.
But who can be?
But I don't know, it's just following a recipe. If I want to impress a girl, I can make a nice pasta recipe. I text Megan and
With
say,
spaghetti jarred
"Oh
spaghetti
no,
sauce?
yeah, I
Okay.
make my own sauce." And text Megan, "What should I cook?" And she'll tell me, and then I can do it. Yeah.
You know, you brought up dating. Then, what is dating like when you guys are traveling on the beat, especially when you're on the road and you're not home so much? Let's start with you, Megan, too, especially as a girl when you're covering sports where guys seem to love that, right? Like, oh, cool. Like they're enamored with the job almost too. Do you find that a challenge ever to date and have the job at the same time?
Yeah, it is a challenge. And I guess it's hard to say because I feel like dating nowadays for people in like my age range, like the 20s, even like early 30s, it's really hard nowadays because it's changed so much and everybody meets on the apps. Actually, Dane and I were just talking about this. Like, it would be so weird if I was sitting at a coffee shop and some guy just like came up and started talking to me. I'd be like,
Pack your stuff
wrong
and
with
leave
you? What are you
because he's gonna kill you.
I
So
know. So it's like nobody meets each other organically anymore, but we all want that, but that doesn't happen. So it's in general hard to date, but especially when you're in sports journalism because the travel schedule is a lot, because your work schedule is oftentimes you're working nights and weekends.
You're
which
on
is kind of the
call,
prime times.
too,
You're on
right?
call all the
Yeah.
time. You never know what's going to happen. You're just like in general very busy. So it makes it even harder. There's like an extra layer on it. And then as far as like what I found with guys is they've been one of two ways, and it's never been a happy medium. And I'm looking for that sweet spot. But you either have the ones that are like super, super into sports and like want to talk about it and want to like debate about it all the time. And you're just like, listen, I do this all day, every day. I don't always want to talk about sports.
Right.
So you either get like that side of it, and like they're the fan too, so they also want to be like, "Oh, have you met Adam Thielen?" It's like, sure, but sure. It's fine. You get that side, or you get the guys that are really blasé because they don't. I don't know where that comes from, but it's like they don't want to act like you're a big deal or act like what you do is interesting, and like that's kind of weird too because I'm like, well, my job is kind of
cool. Let's call it out. It's kind of cool.
But like, so I don't know. I'm just looking for somebody who's not gonna like sit there and kind of be like, oh, like whatever. You cover sports. It's like, well, it's not. I mean, it's more interesting than being in marketing.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's an extreme there, and it's hard to find that.
Dane?
I would agree.
Yeah.
My love life is currently in shambles. No, we're bouncing back.
Dane.
It's fine. It's tough because our job, like Megan says, we're traveling all the time, especially in the NHL, like 82 games, 41 road. I don't travel to all of them, but I travel to probably 70% of them. So there's weeks at a time where you're not home. And even when you are home, there's night games, like there's not a lot of time to.
You couldn't meet somebody organically if you wanted to, almost either, right? 'Cause
unless you're at a hockey rink. And no thanks.
You would rather not date somebody that's a hockey fan then?
I would rather not date someone that's a sports fan. Because like I think it kind of goes back to what Megan was saying. Like I do this all the time. Like the last thing I want to do is talk shop and talk about, oh, how good do you think the Wild can be this year?
Yeah.
Oh, what do you think about the Vikings? Like, no, I'd rather just like get to know you rather than talk more about sports teams in the area. Yeah, so it can be tough. nowadays the dating apps are pretty prevalent. Those can also be tough. Those are just like, it's just so like superficial, and like you're swiping right, you're swiping left. And I don't think it's a bad way to meet people.
Yeah.
But it can be frustrating because it's so like in and out. Like you're talking to someone one day and then 2 days later, like you guys aren't talking anymore. So it's like, it can be tough. And I think that coupled with the job and the grind and how busy we can get, like, not to say dating is tougher on sports journalists, because dating is tough on everyone, but yeah, I think it plays a role.
I'd agree. Like, it's funny. My husband, he's a sports fan, and he definitely loved that I was into sports. I told him my career, because at that point too, I would go wherever my job wanted to take me, right? Like, I'm like, nope, if ESPN calls, I'm out of here. So just so you know, Mike, I think, is it? What's your name? I was not looking for anything serious when I met him either. But he thought the job was cool. He was like, sure, that's great. But you could tell he wasn't like super excited about, oh, you see Zach Parisi, this person. It was never about that for him. And in fact, he kind of resents the job now, not only because I'm gone all the time, but because I have a really tough time wanting to really watch much hockey when I'm not at the rink. I'm like, he's like, you used to love watching hockey. I'm like, and now it's a job and I'm exhausted and I don't really care. Like, let's watch some trash TV. And so it's just kind of funny. It's definitely, and it's finding that balance. And we met on a dating app. Again, like I said, rebound galore. He just still liked me. I'm like, oh, really? We're still going to do this. Okay, sure. And
which dating app?
Tinder. No, we were Tinder.
Wow.
Tinder got a shout out at our wedding. Yeah.
Because Tinder is different now, Jessi.
Is it? You can pay. Do you pay now to like get like you can unswipe?
You can,
I think
but you shouldn't. No. But Tinder's just a different.
Is it classier now?
No.
You went the other way.
You would not find your husband on Tinder nowadays.
I mean, I really shouldn't have found him then either. That was not the plan. Let's dive into some actual maybe sports too, for those that want to hear our takes on sports. It's kind of hit or miss. Dane, obviously wild trade deadline coming up. I know you and I got to be on Care 11 together to talk a little bit about it, but who do you see actually being marketable and tradable and possibly not with the team after the 24th?
Yeah, I go back to Marcus Foligno, and this one's hard because...
Sorry, Alexis.
Yeah, it's just like, love the guy, and he's awesome with the media. He's just an awesome dude to, shoot the breeze with after games, after practice. I just think, like, if they can get value for him, they should jump at it. But I've went on Care 11 and said that they should trade him. And I'm kind of backing off on that now, because you look at it.
The Twitter mob was out, right?
Yeah.
They were like, no,
Jessi
Dane.
just dragged me on Twitter.
Yes,
no,
I
but
did.
you look at it, they're only 2 points out of a playoff spot going into Sunday's game against the Colorado Avalanche. And Bill Guerin, I think he came in with goals of obviously making the team better, but looking at what Paul Fenton did last year, where he kind of just came in and just destroyed everything, destroyed relationships, trust, the team itself. I think Bill Guerin wanted to kind of let this thing breathe and give this guys a chance. And he's been pretty frank, saying he's going to wait as long as he can. Well, now the team, they've suddenly won 3 games in a row heading into Sunday's game. So if you're Bill Guerin, you might want to just say, hey, like, we'll let you guys ride this out through the season and then reevaluate in the offseason. It might do something to build some trust of these guys, that you trust them enough to at least give them a chance for 2 more months. Like, I don't know if trading Marcus Foligno in February is going to be much different than trading him in July at the draft, or in June at the draft, or next year when he is truly a rental. If you look at the roster, the way it's constructed with the Wild, there's no rentals on the team. So it's not like, I don't think you're going to get insane value of these guys, these playoff teams who want these players, because they're going to have to pay them next year too. So if you really want to trade a rental like Marcus Foligno next year when he is in the final year of his contract, or Jonas Brodin next year when he is in the final year of his contract, I think you're going to be able to get more. But I still go back, like, if someone is somehow willing to give you a first-round pick for Marcus Foligno, I think you have to really, really consider it.
And you would rather have picks than players, kind of, right?
I would,
you think?
because
okay.
you're, like, the Wild aren't a Stanley Cup contender right now, in my opinion. And I think most people would agree with that. But their top 12, their forwards are really crowded. So if you're trading Marcus Foligno and you're getting back a forward, like, I don't know what you're doing, really. Like, I think you want to stockpile assets, build for the future, hope Kaprizov is what he is when he comes over next year, and just kind of then figure out who is a part of that core going forward.
Sure. Do you think, what about Jason Zucker too? What do you do with a player like him where his name again is floated to the top and you keep him because he has the speed that is so limited on this team right now.
Yeah, he's a guy, another one where he's been a 30-goal scorer. I don't know if he's ever going to be this star player that maybe it looked like he would be one day, but he still has speed and he can score, and that's something that I don't think a lot of guys on the team have. Like, you look at the way that they score goals, and it's right in front of the goal mouth, like gritty goals. And Jason has the speed to create these breakaways, and I think he has like a marketable skill that teams in a playoff push would want. But I don't know if you're Minnesota, if you want to give that up, because are you going to get someone back that's going to be as good as Jason Zucker is right now down the road? I'm not sure. So
Right. How far off do you think, how many years off before the Wild could actually be a contender again? Like, I know I have in my mind, it's another 5 to 7 years. I think people forget about that. Like, I think even if you were to clean house, you're not going to be an immediate contender the next year. It takes time to rebuild, and I don't think, and Wild fans hate to hear that. I know, very, very impatient in the state of Minnesota. But how far off do you think, especially if Kaprizov comes, then what happens, right? Then what goes?
I think they're pretty far off from being like a legitimate contender. I don't think they're necessarily far off from being a team that can slip back into the playoffs like they might do this year even. But is that what you want? Do you want your team to be the 7 seed, the 8 seed?
Do you like being the bubble, the question mark?
And then
year,
getting... your clock cleaned in the first round. Like, I don't know. Like, it really depends on Kaprizov, though. Like, if he comes in, it's not like he's a kid. Like, he's going to be 23, 24 when he comes in. Maybe 22, 23. So he's not like this 18-year-old kid who's going to have to deal. Like, he's a man at this point. And if he can come in and be dynamic and be this sniper that everyone thinks he can be, like, then I think that expedites the process. If you also look at this year, if the Wild somehow fall off again and they get a high draft pick, like, you pair that high draft pick with Kirill Kaprizov, and I think your process can be a little bit faster than you think. But they're quite a few pieces away still.
What do you make of the goaltending situation? I know even before the Colorado game, Bruce said they're really looking to get Dubnyk going again and get him some confidence, string some wins together. He looked good in Dallas. But what do you make of splitting, Stalock and Dubnyk when I don't know that either of them really stand strongly on their own as a starter this year?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Like, they're going to really have to grind, both of those guys, in my opinion. And, like, it's easy being, not easy is probably not the right word, but I think it's you're in a favorable position as a backup. Like, the backup quarterback's always the most popular guy on the team. The backup goaltender, Al Stalock, like, he comes in, and to his credit, he's been great this year.
Yeah.
But it's because people aren't expecting him to be this. He's already exceeded expectations far and away. So I think it's foolish to think you could roll Al for like the final 25 games of the season, which I think before last game before the game against the Stars where Dubnyk was lights out, like, people were saying, forget Dubnyk, let's roll Al. Like, He's still a backup. He's always been a backup goaltender, and he's playing really, really well this year, but he's not someone I think you want to roll all the way going forward. So it's really going to take both of them. I don't know if they are in your future plans as far as a timeline. I think those two, I think probably deep down they both know they're not a part of this team's contending future.
Sure.
But those guys, I mean, they deserve credit for at least getting them in the hunt this year. Like, the Wild, every single year it seems like, come trade deadline after that playoff push, like, they're always somewhat relevant. And if they're going to remain relevant, it's going to be because of Dubnyk and Stalock.
Do you think Kakkonen has it in him? Do you get him some game? I mean, Iowa seems to be rolling as well and doing well down in the A, but do you think he looked okay for the brief stint?
It's too hard to say right now. Like,
sure.
I think with what St. Louis did last year, everyone thinks you can just call up your AHL goalie and they're going to be Jordan Binnington. Like, Kakkonen's not going to be Jordan Binnington.
Yeah.
But there is like a mystique there. We don't know a lot about him. He's had some impressive games in his, cup of coffee in the league. He also, I think, gave up 9 goals in like 2 games before getting sent down. So, like, he's not this guy that I think everyone hopes him to be. But I can't make like a sweeping judgment on Kakkonen right now because we just haven't seen enough of him.
What about Matt Robeson, a player that we'll bring it full circle here, guys.
Go
for hockey. Go for hockey to the Wild. What are your thoughts on him? And then Megan, I'd love to hear what your thoughts on him when he played for the Gophers.
Yeah, I think he's another one of those guys. Like, he's just kind of a flyer at this point. Like,
right.
Who knows what he is? He's a lottery ticket. Like, I know people are high on him down in the AHL, but I think it's still different. Like, doing it in the AHL and then coming up and doing it in the NHL. Like,
sure.
I don't think we know. Anyone who says they know a lot about Matt Robson's lying, like as far as a professional, as what he's going to compute to at the NHL level.
Yeah.
So I think at some point you have to give Kokkonen and Robson a chance. But until then, I don't think we can say like these two are going to be the goalies of the future.
Sure. So shift gears is a good transition over to Gopher hockey then. What do you remember from him? Do you think he made the right decision in leaving early to go pro?
I think that's always kind of like a personal decision. I think for him, like he had the opportunity, and it would be, I don't know. I think when you get to a point in your career, it's just like if you get the professional opportunity, you should take it. And especially with hockey, because like, I mean, so rarely are these guys going right from college into like the team, like they're going to the AHL. So I think he always knew that was going to be his path. He got an opportunity to do it. So you might as well do that. Because he wasn't drafted. He was signed as a free agent. So, right. He was really good last year. And I think that's honestly something that I think the Gophers would have loved for him to stay for his last year of eligibility, because their goaltending situation right now is like, they've got Jack LaFontaine, who's actually from the same place as Robson in Canada, a town in Ontario that I will butcher the name. Mississauga?
This is why we write, right?
Mississauga.
Because it's very hard.
Is that it? They're actually from the same place, and they like know each other, Jack LaFontaine and Matt Robson. But like, so they've been circling with him and their freshman Jared Moe, and it's been really hit or miss with those guys. And so I think they would love to have somebody who is kind of a solid back there, always playing, instead of like one weekend it's Jared Moe, and then he lets in 4 goals. Okay, well let's go back to Jack and we'll see how he does. So it's kind of been a circus back there.
But the Gopher hockey team has started to kind of get things on a roll anyway, especially after the real grim start at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. So funny anecdote there is I talked to Bob Motzko, the coach, over the summer at one of the coaches' caravan stops for the Gophers. And we were just like having a little interview. And then afterwards he was like, so are you going to cover us next year? Because I covered them all last year because I was in between beats, but then I was going on to Gophers football. And I was like, well, kind of, but probably wouldn't be until after football season. And he was like, okay. Well, we'll just wait till January to start winning. And then
lo and behold,
I know.
here
And
we
then
are.
I talked to him again this week, and I was like, Bob, remember that? I guess you were really serious. And he was like, well, I guess I was.
Yeah.
So yeah, they did wait for me to start winning, but I mean, to be fair, they have, I think 19 freshmen and sophomores. Like most of those 19 are freshmen. So it's a really young team. And I think they were just like inexperienced to start. Like that's kind of what Bob was telling me, was they would make mistakes that would cost them a game, but it would be a mistake that you would look at and go like, that's not going to be a problem. Like that's not,
Sure.
That's just kind of a thing that a freshman or a sophomore does, and they learn from it and then it's fixed. Yeah. But that really hurt them in the beginning of the year. And I think once the holiday break came, they got a couple weeks off. They were able to kind of reset. They kind of went into the second half with like a renewed vigor. And I think they got a lot of things figured out. And so now they're looking really good. I mean, they lost last night to Michigan State, which was kind of a bad loss. They were up 2-1, and then they just like, I don't know, the wheels fell off in the third period, and they just let in 3 goals, and it was bad.
That goaltending. That's,
yeah, I know. Poor Jared Moe.
Yeah.
He tried. So it was kind of rough in the third period. But in general, they've been really good. And I think what's been good is their defense has gotten a lot stronger, and a lot of that is, it's hard when you have a young defensive core, because that's one of the harder kind of positions when you're young, especially when you're on Olympic ice, try to figure it out. So that's gotten a lot better, and they've got a lot of freshman D, but there's a lot of highly drafted guys in that freshman D too. But then they've got these 2 lines that are really, like their third line actually was pretty good this weekend too, but they've got these 3 lines, which is like, one's Sammy Walker, who was Big Ten freshman of the year last year. He's still playing with Blake McGoughlin, and they added Scott Reedy onto that line. And they had a really good weekend. I think they had 13 points over the 2 games against Michigan State this weekend. And then their other line, Sampo Ranta, Brandon McManus, and the other player is, why am I just, freshman, Ben Myers. There we go. Yeah. So that line was really good a couple of weekends ago, and they kind of were like a new combination, and they've been really lights out. And I attribute a lot of that actually to Sampo. He's their Finnish player, and he was kind of, again, hit or miss in the beginning of the season. And then all of a sudden, the second half, he's looked really good, and he's gotten a lot more physical. He's got the body for it, and I think he's learning how to play that way. So they've got these 2 lines that are really rolling. Their defense looks better. Goaltending is like, who's to say?
Yeah.
So they could make it. I mean,
I was going to say, do they make the tournament in April?
I mean, it's hard because they dug themselves such a hole at the beginning of the year, and because they just lost one game against Michigan State. They've got 3 more series left against Notre Dame, Penn State, and Michigan, I believe, and they have to basically win out in order to get into the tournament pairwise rankings.
Sure.
Wise. Or they could, get home ice in the Big Ten tournament, which I think they probably will. They're about 2 points out of first place right now in like a 3-way tie for second. It's like crazy in the Big Ten. But if they win the Big Ten tournament, they're also in. And I think they do have a chance. They are playing really well. When they're playing their best, like, for example, this weekend for the whole series, minus the very last third period, they looked great. And I thought they really looked almost unbeatable. So it'll be interesting to see how it works out. But I think they could actually do it. It's just kind of an uphill battle.
Well, the final question I have is actually for you, Dane. T-shirt guy. Oh, we cannot let you go without talking about the most controversial fight, I would say.
It's a fight.
It's a fight. A lot of people might not know the background. So if you've ever been to a Wild game in the past couple seasons, there's this gentleman named Cameron who loves to fling his T-shirts at folks. He's a hired, paid entertainer by the Wild. And Dane hasn't particularly been interested in his antics, I guess. He doesn't find them entertaining.
No, I think he's a clown. I don't know. Like, he gets paid to take his shirts off. And
I mean, he's
presumably
wearing a lot of shirts,
they are
by the
sweaty.
way.
Like,
Yes.
he's probably wearing in the upwards of 10, 15 shirts. I don't know.
And they're Wild brand, like they're logoed shirts.
And they're probably freaking enormous. Like, oh, cool. This 6-year-old child just caught a sweaty shirt that's a triple XL. Like, oh, that's awesome. Like, sweet. No, but I've been on the beat 4 years now. This is my 4th year. Ever since year 1, even before I got on the beat, even when I would go to Wild games in college.
Because he doesn't just do Wild games. He's done other games before.
And also, like, he's a clown. The fans who think he's just some random fan who's just super excited and taking all his shirts off, they're also clowns. Like,
you are not mincing words.
But like,
on it.
it's just like
cutthroat.
I would always comment on it on Twitter, social media, full circle. Like, I would always comment, "This is ridiculous. This guy sucks." Blah blah blah. Then some reporter that we won't name tagged Cameron Cheers on Twitter. That's his Twitter. And Cameron took it upon himself 2 years ago to come up to the press box and confront me. And as Dan Myers, Wild team reporter, will say, I turtled. But to be fair,
I mean, you did.
I was working, and this sweaty, humongous man just showed up over my shoulder. And ever since then, I don't think he likes me, and I certainly don't like him. So.
I think I have a photo of the confrontation too, because at first you weren't quite sure, right? So he comes up into the press box, and we all sit there in the row, and we all knew that Dane had been giving him a hard time for a couple years, and it was funny. And he comes up and approaches him. We do have a video that we will share with you guys. And at first it seemed like it might be in jest, right? Like,
That's
this
what
is
I
just
thought.
very lighthearted. And then it took a turn where Cameron was very angry with Dane and was like, good luck with your career, man. Didn't he say something like that?
Yeah, something really condescending. Okay, and like, let's be fair. Like, the first 2 years, like, yeah, I was mean about him on Twitter, but like, it was pretty joking. Like, I was like, yeah, this guy's stupid. But like, and after that confrontation, I'm like, okay, this dude takes himself way too seriously. Like, if he can't take a little bit of jabbing on Twitter, doing the job he does, like, then
he gets paid a good amount of money too. I mean, he gets paid more than us writers. I'm pretty sure. I'm almost
maybe that's where
positive.
my disdain lies, is that he's figured it out. He's figured out the cheat code of life, and but yeah, no, he's sure he's a nice man. Maybe
You don't want to use this podcast as an apology?
no,
You stand by what you
no.
think?
Maybe have him on the podcast next, and see what he says about me.
Yeah,
So I'm sure he's got nice things to say.
I mean, I'm not very intrigued by his. It's a lot of hand movement that I just think he needs to get a new bit, a little bit. Mix up the moves would be my preference, but that's because we watch a lot of games. So,
Should we also get Dane's opinion on the kiss cam? That's his other audience participation thing that he hates.
Yeah, kiss cam's stupid. Who wants to see people make out?
if you want some great negative takes, just follow Dane, and are there honest takes though? I think they're great.
Yeah.
They're wonderful.
Like, do we want to see strangers make out in front of us? Like, I don't know. Like, I'll just go to a bar if I want to see that. I don't know. see that.
You're not wrong, man. You're
Yeah.
not wrong. Well, again, Dane and Megan, thank you guys so much. You can read each of them. Pioneer Press for Dane, Star Tribune for Megan. Follow them along on Twitter. The other real Meg Ryan is probably my favorite Twitter handle ever, Meg. And then Dane underscore, I don't know what's your
Dane
handle.
Mizutani. Good luck without spelling it.
All right, thanks, guys. We'll be right back. And before we let you go, we want to give a shout out to Mr. Zach Parisi, who reached the milestone 1,000 career games against the Dallas Stars on Friday night. Did so in winning fashion. Played one more game since then, Sunday against the Colorado Abs. But big time for Zach, especially with the way he plays and just the abuse that his body takes, the injuries that he's had. I'm sure he's wished he would have gotten to game 1,000 a little bit earlier in his career. But definitely very exciting. Proud Minnesotan, great guy. Lucky to have him here with the Wild. And congrats again to Mr. Parisi. Fred, you have a good...
He's got... I'm always so curious how he takes so many shots from goalies in the back of the lower back. I mean, just full-blown cross-checks from goalies while he's standing in the front of the crease.
It's not great.
It's got to be permanent, like just slashing right in the back of the leg.
Yeah, like Alex Daylock, we talked to Alex Daylock ahead of the milestone, and he had said, well, if you look at Zach's face, he doesn't look like he's played 1,000 games. His body says otherwise, which is very true. I mean, you feel for the guy. He's been through hell and back with that body of his. But it's exciting. Glad he was able to reach it. Glad he was able to do it. That will be honored February 15th by the Wild here in their game against San Jose. So
Do you get anything? Do you get anything for your 1,000th game?
you get a stick.
A stick.
I think. Yeah, I don't know what color.
Just in case he doesn't get enough sticks.
Because you've got a lot of people, a lot of milestones this year for the Wild, a lot of money being shelled out by the Wild to players this year. So it's funny, but no, we wanted to give a shout out to him. Hopefully we'll get him on here soon and give him some love that way. But again, congrats to Mr. Parisi, and a big thank you to Dane and Megan for being our guests. Thanks to Fred for kicking his family out and prioritizing the podcast over that. Tune in again next week. We will have Paul Fletcher on to preview some pretty exciting games coming up with the Hendrickson Foundation. So thanks for listening.